Chapter 1086, Working Together. What's in there? A faint golden layer of light covered Zhao Feng's left eye as he looked through the crystal walls. At this instant, Zhao Feng seemed to see another world. It was an enormous red crystal vine that might have been even bigger than the Great Gan Imperial Palace. This vine spiraled upward like a whirlpool that went through the roof of the crystal walls. There were 7 colored fruits on the vine. They filled the sky like stars and spread out across the entire dimension. However, the vine and the fruits were covered by a thin layer of crystal such that even the fruit's color wasn't able to pass through the surface. There seemed to be another enormous crystalline item in the dimension apart from the enormous vine as well. Of course, this was just what Zhao Feng saw. He didn't feel any other aura or pressure. That's an entirely new world. Zhao Feng took in a deep breath. The vine was the largest plant that Zhao Feng had ever seen in his life. It was like a mysterious kingdom. The faint red soul intent should be coming from the vines, Zhao Feng concluded. However, there was a layer of white crystal covering the surface of the vines. This source of power was probably leaking out from some cracks. However, if the aura that was leaking was already so effective that it could allow Mystic Light Realm experts to gain comprehension, it was hard to imagine what kind of effect there would be if one cultivated directly within or what kind of unique abilities the fruits had. Right at this moment, Demigod Withered Breath gave a puzzled glance toward Zhao Feng, and Zhao Feng immediately stopped using his light of transparency to inspect the inner region of the crystalline item. Senior Withered Breath? What is it? A sacred king from Sky Suspension Palace next to Demigod Withered Breath asked. He saw Demigod Withered Breath look at Zhao Feng, but he didn't understand why an early-stage sacred lord would attract the attention of a demigod. Zhao Feng's gaze immediately turned elsewhere. That is? Zhao Feng's expression froze when he looked in a certain direction in the distance. He found that there was another large crystalline item on the outskirts. From the looks of it, there are a lot of crystalline items like this, but this one has a crack on the surface. Zhao Feng's knowledge expanded once more. There was countless fortune within the God Corpse, but not everyone here had the strength to find it. This time, Zhao Feng chose to stay behind and wait for the right timing since 2 forces were here. The fortune within the inner regions of the God Corpse was far more precious than the fortune on the outskirts of the God Corpse. Even if he couldn't obtain any fruits from the vines, just sensing the aura from the vines was very beneficial for Zhao Feng. Zhao Feng closed his eyes and started to cultivate. He finally had some time to cultivate, so he obviously couldn't waste it. He circulated the 10,000 Divine Thoughts technique and started to multitask. Zhao Feng immediately took out some precious resources and substandard god crystals he had obtained in the God Corpse. A measly early-stage sacred lord is using substandard god crystals to cultivate? That brat isn't scared that he'll die from flaunting his wealth? Some sacred lords couldn't help but curse when they saw Zhao Feng being so wasteful. They weren't willing to spend any of the resources that they obtained in the God Corpse since they were planning to use it to break through bottlenecks in the future. Some sacred lords and sacred kings had already set their sights on Zhao Feng, but he kept on cultivating by himself. In reality, Zhao Feng still had some unique resources like ancient herbs and bloodline essence, but they didn't come from the God Corpse, so it was unsuitable for him to take them out now. Time slowly passed, and Zhao Feng completely used up the substandard god crystals and resources in his hands. The sacred power whirlpool within his body became bigger and brighter. At this moment, another group approached from a crystal pathway far away. An old non-human sacred king has arrived. Many people in Zhao Feng's area exclaimed. One sacred king wasn't enough to give an advantage to the non-humans, but if a couple more sacred kings came, it would be different. After all, demigods were just sacred kings that had touched the power of godhood. They weren't true gods, and the actual difference between them and sacred kings wasn't that big. Zhao Feng's expression froze when his divine sense scanned over. This non-human sacred king was Sacred King Roaring Sky, who had chased after Zhao Feng and company a while back. Back then, Zhao Feng, Nan Gongsheng, Zhao Yufei, and Sacred Lord Gong Huang had teamed up to fight, but they were unable to escape from this sacred king. In the end, Sacred King Yulong from the Grand Imperial Hall arrived and saved them. Of course, Sacred King Roaring Sky soon found Zhao Feng and company as well and revealed a disdainful expression. I didn't kill you back then, but if I have a chance, I will definitely do so this time. Many people on both sides knew that Sacred King Roaring Sky was talking about Zhao Feng and company. After all, sacred kings rarely appeared on the battlefield, so a lot of attention was paid to the appearance of each sacred king. A human Sacred King soon arrived as well. It was Sacred King Earth Ghost from the Earth Demon cult. That brat is here as well? Sacred King Earth Ghost looked at Zhao Feng with furrowed eyebrows. He was slightly scared of Zhao Feng because he was almost certain that Zhao Feng had many replica god-slaying arrows or even a true god-slaying arrow. How else would 3 measly sacred lords dare to enter the god corpse by themselves? It would be the same as courting death. Senior Earth Ghost, please come this way. Sacred King Earth Ghost, we'll tell you everything that's happening here. Many human sacred lords and sacred kings greeted Sacred King Earth Ghost warmly. Sacred King Earth Ghost avoided Zhao Feng and went to the very front to understand the current situation from some upper echelon members of Sky Suspension Palace. At a certain moment, an elder with white hair next to demigod Withered Breath exited their little world. Senior Withered Breath, we're ready. This elder took out some white array flags. They were of different sizes and had different structures as well. Demigod Arcane Void, let's start. Demigod Withered Breath suddenly said. Sure. A middle-aged male with black wings and a sharp mouth instantly stood up from the non-human side. Everyone exited seclusion with boiling blood and excitement. We can finally start now. 2 demigods and an array grandmaster. We will definitely be able to conquer the fortune here. In reality, both demigods had given it a try when they first arrived, but to no avail. Now that there were more and more experts here and they had the help of an array created by an array grandmaster, everyone believed that they would be able to conquer this crystalline item and be able to scout out what was inside of it. Who tilde? Grandmaster Chi suddenly threw out all the array flags into the air and activated a technique as he released countless seals. Whoosh! 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 The array flags in the air suddenly released sacred power and moved in a pattern until it formed an enormous array. Stop, Grandmaster Chi said lightly. Whoosh! 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 All of the array flags that were flying through the air suddenly stopped as the array formed. Can everyone present control a certain array flag and help out? That's the only way we'll be able to conquer the fortune here. Grandmaster Chi laughed and said. Sue. All of the groups started to move next to some array flags. The humans and non-humans managed to fill up every array flag position. Attack. The 2 demigods gave the order and started to circulate the array. Boom. The array flashed with countless terrifying undulations of power as everyone circulated their mystic light sacred power and unleashed their secret offensive techniques. Balls of multicolored lights of power instantly landed on the crack of the crystal. This array is extremely profound. Zhao Feng held one of the array flags and felt a weird connection to everyone else present. In the attack just now, everyone's power had merged together and managed to become an entire level stronger. It had exceeded Zhao Feng's imaginations. The crack on the crystal only spread a little bit, but the intent suddenly became stronger. All of the experts present had to resist the urge to start gaining comprehension. Again. Demigod Withered Breath gave the order. The blood of everyone present boiled as they circulated their mystic light sacred power and unleashed another barrage of attacks. Bam! 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 This time, a slightly larger crack appeared on the surface of the crystal, and smaller cracks spread in every direction. A desolate intent started to move, and it shook the hearts of even the 2 demigods at the front of the array. Everyone's eyes flashed as they tried to see what was within the crack. Last round of attacks. Demigod Withered Breath's tone was decisive. The humans and non-humans present were extremely excited. They obviously believed what a demigod said, they would be able to break through with this last attack. Pang! Boom! Everyone impatiently unleashed the last round of attacks, then threw down their array flags and got ready to charge in. Boom! The cracks on the crystal instantly expanded by several times and opened up a small pathway. A red intent surged out like the tsunami and released a forceful and desolate aura. Watch out! Zhao Feng circulated his soul intent and released the projection of his little world of illusions to cover Zhao Yufei and Nangongsheng. Bam! Surges of terrifying intent shot out from the pathway and crashed around like a monster. Some of the sacred lords that weren't prepared even lost their consciousness, while the sacred lords with stronger soul intent or defensive treasures felt that something was wrong and instantly started to protect themselves. Although Zhao Yufei and Nangongsheng were protected by Zhao Feng's little world of illusions, they still felt their souls become bombarded, and their consciousnesses turned blurry. Chapter 1087, Fruit of the Vines. Surges of terrifying intent shot out from the pathway and crashed around like a monster. Although Zhao Yufei and Nan Gongsheng were protected by Zhao Feng's little world of illusions, they still felt their souls become bombarded, and their consciousnesses turned blurry. Zhao Feng's situation was much better. He had a strong soul and the soul recovery divine technique. Adding on the fact that he had the protection of the god's spiritual eye, there was almost zero effect on Zhao Feng. The intent that filled the area only weakened after a long time. Almost 70% of the experts present had lost their consciousness and fallen to the ground. No one knew if they were dead or alive. The remaining sacred lords that had stronger soul intent or secret techniques were unwell, and even sacred kings didn't feel very good either. This barrage of intent had made their souls extremely weak. Although the two demigods' souls were very strong, they were standing at the very front, so they were affected as well. At this moment, all the experts finally understood. It was because too much energy had gathered in the crystal. A sudden hole released all the energy, creating this situation. However, those that were still awake didn't care about this and immediately charged into the crystal. Zhao Feng circulated his soul power to help Zhao Yufei and Nan Gongsheng. "Brother Feng, thank you." Zhao Yufei immediately thanked Zhao Feng. Her soul intent was the weakest of the three. It was already a miracle she could stay awake right now. "Let's go," Zhao Feng said after seeing that they were both doing well. Whoosh! 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 The trio immediately charged into the small pathway. You three are fine?" Sacred King Roaring Sky was about to enter when he was surprised by Zhao Feng and company being fine. Even some sacred kings had been injured since they were off guard, but these three human sacred lords managed to maintain their consciousness? "If that's the case, then go die." Sacred King Roaring Sky had a nasty expression. From his point of view, even if these three sacred lords managed to block the intent just now, their current state wouldn't be very good. This would be especially true for Zhao Feng and Zhao Yufei, who were still at the early stages of the mystic light realm. Who tilde? A dark green halberd appeared in Sacred King Roaring Sky's hand. It glittered with a faint blue light, and it seemed to be able to control the power of water. Tribulation Lightning Eye Flame. Zhao Feng attacked before Sacred King Roaring Sky could. Zhao Yufei and Nan Gongsheng were very weak right now, so they definitely weren't Sacred King Roaring Sky's match. Thus, Zhao Feng used his Soul Eye bloodline techniques right away. Boom! A ball of burning god tribulation lightning symbols landed on Sacred King Roaring Sky's soul. Sacred King Roaring Sky, who only just took out his heaven-grade divine weapon, was instantly interrupted before he could attack. Arg! Sacred King Roaring Sky felt like his soul had entered a hell of fire and lightning as he withstood the bombardment of 10,000 bolts of lightning. This attack only contained 30% of Zhao Feng's god tribulation lightning, but since Sacred King Roaring Sky had to face that intent a moment ago, his soul was relatively weak, so 30% was enough to injure him. Zhao Feng and company used this chance to enter the crystal after unleashing this attack. Damn it! That brat Zhao Feng. Sacred King Roaring Sky had to admit he had underestimated his opponent. Zhao Feng's growth exceeded his expectations as well. Who tilde? Zhao Feng and company seemed to arrive in another world the moment they entered the giant crystal. Multicolored lights flashed within the dimension, and profound intent filled every inch of space. A thick and heavy power of laws crushed down upon them. In just an instant, the trio felt their soul intent become stronger, but immediately following that, Nan Gongsheng and Zhao Yufei felt like they were unable to withstand this ritual. They had to completely concentrate or else their intent would become weaker until they fell into this power, unable to regain their consciousness. The situation was similar to when Zhao Feng put his soul into the pond of the ancient dream realm. However, this power slowly faded away, so those within the crystal might feel better. That is? Zhao Yufei looked toward the sky. Colorful fruits could be seen across the vine, and each gave off a weird glow. One could tell they were treasures just by looking at them, and at this moment in time, there were countless fruits. They were like stars that filled the sky. What's going on? Nan Gongsheng leapt into the air, but he felt the lore straining him that he couldn't describe. His sacred lord intent also couldn't merge into this dimension. The laws of heaven and earth here are different from the continent zone. Zhao Feng sensed with one glance. This dimension was similar to the ancient dream realm, but it was more condensed in terms of laws and intent. Meow meow. The little thieving cat jumped out of the misty spatial world and seemed to be completely unaffected. It inspected its surroundings with its black eyes. At this moment, the two demigods were in the sky. They had already moved around the vine, trying to find possible fortune. The sacred kings and late-stage sacred lords also spread out and tried to find fortune. Whoosh! Sacred King Roaring Sky also entered, but he didn't bother with Zhao Feng and company anymore. Instead, he flew into the air and inspected the vine, trying to find his own fortune. Those that entered first had a higher possibility of finding treasure. He obviously wouldn't waste such precious time on Zhao Feng. At a certain moment, Demigod Withered Breath stopped and waved his hand. A profound flash of light landed on a red fruit. The layer of crystal around this red fruit was extremely thin, and there was even a slight crack on it, but the crystal around the fruit remained unfazed by Demigod Withered Breath's attack. Withered Breath, did you find anything? Demigod Arcane Void revealed a wicked smile as a pair of black wings spread behind his back, and he headed toward Demigod Withered Breath. You're courting death. Demigod Withered Breath's expression became grim as countless beams of light filled the air and shot toward Demigod Arcane Void. The two demigods are fighting. Nan Gongsheng's heart jumped. The two demigods quickly adapted to this dimension. The sky was the battleground of two demigods, so it had become a forbidden area. Zhao Feng and company also split up and went to search for their own fortune by relying on their own skills. Zhao Feng first arrived next to a blue fruit and released a strong surge of eye intent. A faint golden light completely saw through the fruit. The beam of light coming from Zhao Feng's left eye disappeared a moment later. It's too hard to disintegrate this crystal. Zhao Feng gave up on disintegrating the crystal. It was too hard to disintegrate the crystal wall or any other material made of divine power with Zhao Feng's current ability. Meow meow. The little thieving cat stood on Zhao Feng's shoulder and started to jump around. You're saying that, since the intent from this dimension is leaking out from the vines, there must be a crack on the surface of the vines? Zhao Feng instantly understood what the little thieving cat meant. In reality, this was the case. The instant everyone entered this dimension, they set their eyes on the stunning fruits, but it was too difficult to obtain these fruits. Demigod Withered Breath found a fruit with a crack on the surface of the crystal and was still unable to break through it. The little thieving cat disappeared after giving Zhao Feng his pointer. It obviously couldn't just sit still in such a place. Zhao Feng didn't bother and spread his intent through this dimension. As the laws in this dimension were similar to the ancient dream realm, most of Zhao Feng's intent could quickly merge into it. Zhao Feng soon sensed that the power of intent was more concentrated in certain regions. Whoosh! Zhao Feng arrived at a certain place next to the vines and indeed felt a crack, and a leaf was extending out from this crack. This crystal leaf was red, and one could clearly see the dark green leafy veins running through it. Zhao Feng felt an extremely clear and concentrated element of wood when he approached this leaf. Zhao Feng took in a deep breath, and a clear sensation washed over Zhao Feng's body. At this instant, all the fatigue disappeared from Zhao Feng's body. Some of the small hidden injuries left behind by forcefully breaking through his cultivation completely disappeared as well. What a unique effect! Zhao Feng was absolutely overjoyed. He quickly plucked away the leaf and took it while no one was paying attention. Zhao Feng then went to the next spot. The crack was smaller this time, and while there was no leaf, comprehending the intent here was much easier. Zhao Feng saw a non-human at the late stages of the mystic light realm sitting on a small crack in the vines, but Zhao Feng wouldn't give up so easily. From the leaf he just obtained, it seemed as if anything here was a precious treasure. There were definitely more treasures and resources here. Zhao Feng started to take action and searched around the vines, managing to find 2 more leaves and some cracks. Sacred King Earth Ghost? Zhao Feng glanced toward Sacred King Earth Ghost in a certain corner. A faint ripple of gold light covered his left eye as he saw through the vines and the crystal wall. Quick! Split apart! Sacred King Earth Ghost said in a rush with a suspicious expression. He held a blade of wind in his hand as he sawed at a yellow fruit. If one looked closely, they would see that this yellow fruit had already split apart from the vines, and it was only hanging onto the vines due to one last shred of crystal. At this moment, Sacred King Earth Ghost was continuously sawing through this last shred of crystal. Once the crystal broke, the yellow fruit would fall. It was at this moment in time that Zhao Feng flew over. Sacred King Earth Ghost, let me give you a hand, Zhao Feng said with malicious intentions. Chapter 1088, Intense Competition. Sacred King Earth Ghost, let me give you a hand. Sacred King Earth Ghost suddenly stopped cutting the crystal and shook when he heard this. It's Zhao Feng. Sacred King Earth Ghost had a complicated expression and didn't know what to do. He was extremely frustrated. There was just one tiny shred of crystal, but he, a Sacred King, couldn't even destroy it before Zhao Feng found him. Zhao Feng, what do you want? Sacred King Earth Ghost's expression became grim as he asked directly. Zhao Feng's arrival didn't attract the attention of any other experts. After all, the area was too big, and since the laws here were different and very strong, there were only about 10 people present. Some had already found their own fortune while others were attracted by the battle between the two demigods in the sky. I want the fruit in front of you. Zhao Feng replied honestly. Don't even think about it. Sacred King Earth Ghost immediately said. Even if he was wary of Zhao Feng, Sacred King Earth Ghost was willing to bet everything for this yellow fruit. Don't panic. If we raise the attention of anyone else, this fruit might soon belong to the demigods. Zhao Feng said with a faint smile, and Sacred King Earth Ghost immediately stopped attacking the thin shred of crystal. Even if he could cut the crystal, this fruit would not be his unless he could install Zhao Feng as soon as he obtained it, because Zhao Feng would just spread news about it, and he wouldn't be able to protect it. This was the same for Zhao Feng though. If Zhao Feng obtained the fruit but couldn't install Sacred King Earth Ghost, Sacred King Earth Ghost would spread news, and Zhao Feng wouldn't be able to protect this fruit either. Sacred King Earth Ghost believed that Zhao Feng knew this logic as well. What do you want? Sacred King Earth Ghost asked. We can share the fruit. Although Zhao Feng really wanted the entire fruit, he knew that it was very unlikely. Even if Zhao Feng took out the God-slaying arrow and killed Sacred King Earth Ghost, it would attract everyone else's attention. Furthermore, the God-slaying arrow was Zhao Feng's biggest card right now. If he used it, Zhao Feng wouldn't dare to remain behind in the God Corpse any longer. Split it? Sacred King Earth Ghost had an ugly expression. He was a Sacred King, and he was the first time find this fruit, but now he had to split it with an early-stage Sacred Lord? He couldn't accept it, but this was the only method possible or else he would get nothing. Although Sacred King Earth Ghost hated Zhao Feng, he really wanted this fruit. If half of the fruit allowed him to touch the domain of gods, it would be simple to kill Zhao Feng afterward. Fine. Sacred King Earth Ghost agreed to Zhao Feng's suggestion. Half of the fruit was better than nothing. I'll cover you. You take the fruit. Zhao Feng told him the plan. The two of them attacking the fruit together would definitely catch the attention of other experts, and it would only become more troublesome. Sure. Sacred King Earth Ghost paused for a moment before laughing. Sacred King Earth Ghost would feel uneasy if he was the one on guard while Zhao Feng took the fruit. Then start. More and more people are coming in. Zhao Feng's eyes were grim as he looked at the entrance, where another two Sacred Lords had entered. The Sacred Lords that had fainted outside were slowly recovering their consciousness, and there were also more groups arriving by the crystal that would enter. Although there was just a bit over a dozen people present, it would soon become packed. If they didn't take the fruit quickly, other experts would soon discover them, and everything would turn into a chaotic battle. Zhao Feng moved away from Sacred King Earth Ghost and leaned on the enormous vine as he started to comprehend the intent leaking from it. Since he was the cover, Zhao Feng obviously created a lot of noise to mask the disturbance of Sacred King Earth Ghost cutting the crystal. Wang tilde. Zhao Feng circulated the 10,000 divine thoughts technique and released a surge of intent into the dimension to feel the desolate and forceful power. In an instant, all the sleeping intent in the air was moved around by Zhao Feng. A dark red whirlpool started to slowly spin around Zhao Feng as the power of invisible intent merged into his soul. What strong intent! Zhao Feng completely concentrated and circulated the soul recovery divine technique at the same time. A non-human Sacred Lord relatively close to Zhao Feng froze before starting to laugh coldly. That brat really doesn't want to live, does he? He's absorbing all the intent in a frenzy. The other Sacred Lords all circulated their soul intent to block this power since the intent was too powerful and profound. One couldn't help but enter comprehension, and they would forget everything happening in the outside world. I'm pretty sure that this brat won't be able to leave here anymore. Another Sacred Lord laughed when they saw Zhao Feng's actions. Zhao Feng's current actions was the same as a king eating precious herbs meant for Sacred Lords. It wasn't something that a king could withstand. He's really not scared of death, is he? But it's better this way. Sacred King Earth Ghost laughed at Zhao Feng's actions. If Zhao Feng's consciousness accidentally fell into the desolate intent and completely fell asleep, then the fruit would be his and his alone. As the origin of everything, Zhao Feng obviously knew how terrifying this intent was, but at the same time, he managed to quickly comprehend completely new laws and intents. This power helped refine Zhao Feng's soul while another portion of it increased the strength of his sacred power. At a certain moment, Zhao Feng activated the God Tribulation lightning symbols in his lightning soul body in order to make his soul more agile and increase the level of his comprehension. Of course, while cultivating, Zhao Feng would also pay attention to what was happening. The two demigods were locked in a fierce clash because of the fruit. It was because of this that not many experts dared to search for treasures in the sky. Demigod Withered Breath, we get half of the fruit each or else neither of us will get anything. Demigod Arcane Void threatened. Although he was slightly weaker than Demigod Withered Breath, he didn't need to defeat him. All he needed to do was interrupt and disturb him. Demigod Arcane Void, you originally had a chance to find other fortune here, but now you don't. Demigod Withered Breath's dim eyes suddenly lit up. Demigod Arcane Void paused for a moment and felt that something was wrong. Sky Suspension Palace used to be the leader of the cultivation world in the Great Gon Lord Dynasty, but the Grand Imperial Hall started to rise, and they formed a Lord Dynasty with a combination of many other forces, making Sky Suspension Palace fall. However, even now, Sky Suspension Palace was a 4-star power and the number 2 force in the Great Gon Lord Dynasty. Their foundation was enough to compete against the Grand Imperial Hall if they wanted to. Wang Tilda. At a certain moment, an old white glove covered in weird talismans appeared on Demigod Withered Breath's skinny right hand. The Heaven-Earth Yuan Chi nearby shook and started to gather the instant this glove appeared. Beams of white light filled the air and formed a giant claw that gave off an aura that could suppress heaven and earth. Substandard God Weapon, Mark of Heaven. Demigod Arcane Void's eyes bulged out. If a demigod had a substandard god item, their battle power would increase by at least 40 to 50%. Although Demigod Arcane Void was a demigod as well, he didn't have a substandard god item. After putting on the Mark of Heaven, Demigod Withered Breath waved his right hand, and a burst of white light swept toward Demigod Arcane Void. In an instant, the sky itself seemed to be ripped apart. The power from the attack was enough to shock the world. Not good. Demigod Arcane Void instantly took out a defensive heaven-grade weapon and burned a wisp of his divine power while using a defensive secret technique. Ring of Heaven and Earth. Limitless black light appeared around Demigod Arcane Void and formed a black barrier. Some of the sacred lords below instantly became dazed as they watched a demigod use a substandard god weapon. Other sacred lords that were comprehending the intent were also interrupted by this extreme power. The power of a complete substandard god weapon. Zhao Feng sighed in his heart. Only demigods could use the full power of substandard god weapons. When they had one, their battle power was an entire level higher. Zhao Feng finally managed to watch a clash between demigods now, but comprehending the intent here was far more useful. In just a short period of time, Zhao Feng's soul intent had increased. However, it had become blurry at the same time, as if he was about to fall into the mountains, the sky, all of heaven and earth created by this intent. The intent here is too strong. Normal sacred lords would have lost their consciousness already if they did what Zhao Feng did. Zhao Feng's left eye suddenly started to spin and gave off a brilliant glow of light, as if it was a work of art. After circulating the god's spiritual eye, Zhao Feng's mind instantly became clear, and he could comprehend the intent at a faster rate. Wang Tilda. Zhao Feng's left eye shot out a faint golden light that helped him gain further understanding of the laws and elements. Whoosh. Zhao Feng felt as if his consciousness had completely merged into this dimension, and he could sense the power of nature very clearly. This breath soul intent is very strong. Sacred King Earth Ghost wasn't very far away from Zhao Feng, and he was stunned. Although most people's attention was attracted by the battle between the demigods, Sacred King Earth Ghost could obviously sense Zhao Feng's current state. After using the power of the god's spiritual eye, Zhao Feng's mind was abnormally clear, and he started to inspect the situation of the outside world once more. Demigod Arcane Void wasn't Demigod Withered Breath's match anymore, so he was completely on the defensive, but Demigod Withered Breath was unable to do anything to Demigod Arcane Void within a short period of time. Demigod Withered Breath let Demigod Arcane Void leave, then used the Mark of Heaven to attack the fruit. Demigod Withered Breath would just turn from offense into defense when Demigod Arcane Void attacked. He placed most of his attention on the fruit. Crack. The cracks on the red fruit's crystal shell instantly widened. Chapter 1089, The Little Thieving Cat's Actions. Demigod Arcane Void didn't know what to do after seeing Demigod Withered Breath go on the defensive. If Demigod Arcane Void could manage to defend against Demigod Withered Breath and his substandard god weapon, Demigod Withered Breath could obviously do the same. Crack. The cracks on the crystal of the red fruit started to become bigger. Demigod Arcane Void was extremely impatient, but he couldn't do anything. There were only 2 non-human sacred kings present, and they didn't dare to help Demigod Arcane Void because there were more human experts present. Demigod Arcane Void is nowhere near as strong as Demigod Withered Breath. Zhao Feng realized. There were obviously differences in strength between demigods as well, and being the Grand Elder of Sky Suspension Palace, Demigod Withered Breath was an expert only below Demigod Dragon Emperor of the Grand Imperial Hall. If there are no accidents, that red fruit will belong to Demigod Withered Breath. Zhao Feng slowly said to himself before turning his gaze in other directions. At this moment, Zhao Yufei was cultivating in a corner. There was a jade tablet with many rings on it in the crystal wall behind her. These rings slowly moved around and gave off a faint divine aura that merged into Zhao Yufei's body. Wang. Zhao Yufei's flawless body flashed with a faint purple light that caused all the heaven-earth Yuanqi nearby to quickly merge into her body. Divine aura? A late-stage human sacred lord close to Zhao Yufei was stunned, but he knew Zhao Yufei's identity and her bloodline, so he didn't disturb her. From the looks of it, Yufei has found her own fortune. Zhao Feng faintly smiled. Zhao Yufei's spiritual race bloodline was extremely sensitive toward heaven-earth Yuanqi. Although she couldn't dig out the treasure in the crystal walls, her spiritual race bloodline could still absorb the energy from the crystal jade stone tablet through the walls. This jade stone tablet was most likely related to the spiritual race in some way. Zhao Feng then turned his eyes in the direction of Nangongsheng. What made Zhao Feng surprised was that Nangongsheng had found a place where he could consolidate his foundation and create a clone. Nangongsheng suddenly ended his cultivation, and the power of his little world projection faded away, revealing a clone that hadn't been completely created yet. Evil God Mental Thought Body, I'll leave it to you. Nangongsheng said impatiently, and a purple and blood-colored figure flashed from Nangongsheng's body as part of it entered the incomplete clone. Kek, let's start. The eyes of Nangongsheng's clone flashed with a weird purple and blood-colored light as it revealed an evil smile. Nangongsheng's clone wasn't complete yet and lacked a lot of intent, but part of the evil god mental thought body's intent entered the clone and merged with the clone, then released a powerful source of mental energy. Boom. Nangongsheng and his incomplete clone then attacked the giant rock that Nangongsheng was cultivating on at the same time. One could see that there were as many cracks on the crystal that Nangongsheng and his clone attacked, and within the cracks was a black fruit. This black fruit gave off zero light, it was different from the bright fruits on the vines. Bam! Nangongsheng and his clone both used a wisp of divine power. Nangongsheng's comprehension has increased dramatically after coming here, so his overall strength is increasing very quickly. Zhao Feng analyzed. Furthermore, the evil god mental thought body was controlling the clone. The other experts set their eyes on certain crystals as well, just like what Nangongsheng did. This was because they realized that there were weapons or treasures within the crystals, but because the crystals blocked off the aura, no one was certain what kind of item was inside. Zhao Feng's intent suddenly felt a unique disturbance. This was something that only Zhao Feng could sense. Little thieving cat. Zhao Feng turned toward the position of the little thieving cat. At this moment, the little thieving cat was hidden in the air. Normal people couldn't see it. In front of the little thieving cat was a large crystal rock. Wang. A faint layer of gold light covered Zhao Feng's left eye as he saw through everything. At this instant, Zhao Feng saw what was within the giant rock in front of the little thieving cat, a short black blade and a purple and blood-colored crystal. Zhao Feng could only see a wavy symbol on the short blade, and the purple and blood-colored crystal was connected to the bottom of the crystal rock, as if it was connected to some sort of power. What does the little thieving cat want? Zhao Feng was puzzled. He knew that little thieving cat had set its eyes on the short black dagger and the purple and blood-colored crystal, but both of them were at the very center of the giant crystal rock. There were no cracks on the crystal at all. Even if more than a dozen demigods teamed up, they wouldn't be able to break through this giant crystal rock. Meow. The little thieving cat opened its mouth. Only Zhao Feng knew what the little thieving cat meant. Only one chance? Zhao Feng murmured, but he didn't understand what it meant. A stealthy silver-gray flow of light suddenly appeared from the little thieving cat's hidden body. This light spun around the little thieving cat, and Zhao Feng saw that the little thieving cat's figure became more transparent, as if its stealth technique had instantly become several times better. From Zhao Feng's point of view, the little thieving cat wasn't just hiding in space anymore, it had merged with the laws themselves. If Zhao Feng didn't use his golden eye ability, he wouldn't be able to sense the little thieving cat's existence. He would only be able to sense the little thieving cat's location with the spiritual pet contract. Who? The little thieving cat turned invisible and flashed forward gently without a trace. The next instant, Zhao Feng realized that the little thieving cat had entered the crystal. The little thieving cat was sitting on the purple and blood-colored crystal, and its left claw ended on the short black blade. How is this possible? Zhao Feng was utterly stunned and almost exited seclusion. What is it? Sacred King Earth Ghost looked at the giant crystal Zhao Feng was looking at, but he couldn't see anything. Zhao Feng glanced toward Sacred King Earth Ghost. He still hadn't managed to destroy the shred of crystal, but that was understandable. After all, Sacred King Earth Ghost couldn't attack carelessly like demigod weathered breath in the sky. In order to stop others from noticing, Sacred King Earth Ghost had to carefully attack the crystal and didn't dare to use too much power. In addition, not too much time had passed since the two started working together. Zhao Feng didn't bother with Sacred King Earth Ghost. He looked at the little thieving cat once more. The little thieving cat had somehow managed to enter the giant crystal. However, the little thieving cat's body couldn't move at all, it was completely stuck in the giant crystal rock. The little thieving cat's eyes turned toward Zhao Feng. Although it couldn't speak, Zhao Feng could sense what the little thieving cat wanted to say. It was showing off to Zhao Feng. A dark glow of light appeared from the little thieving cat's body once more and flowed the short black blade through its left paw. Wang tilde. The wavy symbol on the short black blade instantly gave off a silver light. You better watch out or you'll be stuck there forever. Zhao Feng cursed. He realized that he had underestimated the little thieving cat once again. He didn't expect it to have hidden such a powerful and mysterious skill. This goddamned pet never thought about what it could do for its master and instead only thought for itself. The short black blade that the little thieving cat wanted was definitely not simple. One had to know that the little thieving cat already had the Shadow Kill Imperial Dagger and the Dark Golden Dragon Snake Whip. The little thieving cat glanced at Zhao Feng and sent him a message. Only then did Zhao Feng's expression soften. Zhao Feng then nodded his head and agreed with the little thieving cat's plan. Zhao Feng turned toward the entrance. A total of 7 figures had appeared. These 7 were Sacred King Feather Spirit, Sacred King Shai, and Sacred King Green Light's group. Zhao Feng. Sacred King Shai immediately sensed Zhao Feng's existence. After all, Zhao Feng's position was extremely eye-catching, and he radiated a powerful mental energy disturbance that tossed and turned the intent of heaven and earth. We're late. The treasures that are easy to be obtained have already been taken away. We should kill him right now. Sacred King Feather Spirit inspected his surroundings before saying. Let's go. Sacred King Shai inspected his surroundings as well and agreed with Sacred King Feather Spirit. Although the other sacred lords wanted to find treasures or cultivate, they didn't dare to go against 3 sacred kings. Whoosh. 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 A total of 7 people charged toward Zhao Feng. Sacred King Earth Ghost, those guys from the Grand Imperial Hall are charging toward us. You need to stop and distract them with me. Zhao Feng messaged Sacred King Earth Ghost. What? You even offended the Grand Imperial Hall? Sacred King Earth Ghost was speechless, but what Zhao Feng said was correct. They had to distract them or else the fruit would be exposed. Zhao Feng, you have nowhere you can run to this time. Today, you shall die. Sacred King Feather Spirit revealed a cocky smile as he charged over. Who? Zhao Feng immediately stopped cultivating and started to fly into the distance. The 7 upper echelon members of the Grand Imperial Hall immediately started to chase after him as if they were bent on killing Zhao Feng. Sacred King Earth Ghost suddenly appeared after Zhao Feng directed the 7 away. May I ask why Brother Feather Spirit and Brother Shai are chasing after little friend Zhao? Sacred King Earth Ghost suddenly asked, and those from the Grand Imperial Hall instantly turned around and looked at Sacred King Earth Ghost in shock. They knew that there was a feud between the Earth Demon cult and the Hall of Gods, but Sacred King Earth Ghost was now speaking for Zhao Feng. It's like this, when my team arrived, we combined forces with Zhao Feng's group in order to obtain the treasures. Sacred King Earth Ghost had to explain. He and Zhao Feng did indeed work together for the fruit, But Sacred King Earth Ghost was the Grand Elder of the Earth Demon Cult, and the Earth Demon Cult was one of the top demonic Tao forces in the Great Gon Lord dynasty. Most importantly, they were allies with Nine Darkness Palace. While these three Sacred Kings were upper echelon members of the Grand Imperial Hall, they didn't represent the demigods of the Grand Imperial Hall, and they didn't act very forceful toward Sacred King Earth Ghost. Sacred King Earth Ghost, this brat Zhao Feng blackmailed us, members of the Grand Imperial Hall, and he's the culprit behind the death of the 13th prince. Sacred King Feather Spirit slowly told Sacred King Earth Ghost about Zhao Feng's crimes. He believed that, as long as they revealed their decisiveness to kill Zhao Feng, the Grand Elder of the Earth Demon Cult would retreat. However, at this moment Zhao Feng didn't even care about what the members of the Grand Imperial Hall were talking about with Sacred King Earth Ghost. Instead, he split out part of his consciousness to inspect what the little thieving cat was doing. Chapter 1090, Change of the Vines. At this moment, the little thieving cat's body was completely stuck in the crystal and unable to move, but a dark silver-gray flow of light flowed out from its body and entered the short black dagger through its paws. Wang tilde Wang tilde. The wavy symbol on the short black dagger flashed with silver and became brighter. At a certain point, the short black dagger trembled slightly within the crystal. Zhao Feng was instantly stunned. Even though the little thieving cat had somehow entered the crystal, it was unable to move, and yet the short black blade managed to tremble slightly. What made Zhao Feng even more surprised was that the crystal around the short black blade was instantly sliced apart. One had to know that the crystals in the God Corpse contained the god's physical force and divine power. Even if the continent's demigods teamed up, they would be unable to break it. However, at this moment, just a slight tremor from the short black blade could cut the crystal, and now that the crystals were cut apart, the little thieving cat's paws were able to grip the short black blade. What happened next made Zhao Feng utterly speechless. The little thieving cat gripped the short black blade and put some faint power into it, and a small hole was formed in the giant crystal rock. Meow meow. The little thieving cat moved around the small hole smugly, then rubbed the short black blade with love. The weapon that the little thieving cat obtained seems to be able to cut through the crystals with ease. Doesn't that mean I can obtain any of the treasures in this place that I want? Zhao Feng was in utter disbelief. The God Corpse contained treasures that could make anyone go crazy, but they were all trapped inside the crystals. Even demigods couldn't do anything to these crystals, but at this moment, the little thieving cat had already used the short black blade to pick through a crystal rock. No one would be able to detect this unless a demigod actively used their divine sense to sense through the rock. However, there were only two demigods present, and they were fighting each other in the air, so it was impossible for them to find the little thieving cat hidden in a random rock. The little thieving cat was tired after obtaining the short black blade, but it was overjoyed as well. Its gaze then turned toward the purple and blood-colored crystal beneath its feet. Ding! Shoo tilde! A surge of dark gray came from the little thieving cat's paws as it used the short black blade to cut through the crystal and slowly reveal the purple and blood-colored crystal. Zhao Feng didn't know what the purple and blood-colored crystal was, but if the little thieving cat liked it, it couldn't be bad. Ding! Ding! Since part of the purple and blood-colored crystal was hidden underground, the little thieving cat had to dig deep. Sacred King Earth Ghost's voice sounded at this moment. Zhao Feng, is Sacred King Feather Spirit telling the truth? Sacred King Earth Ghost roared out loud. In reality, he felt extremely helpless because he didn't really dare to go against Sacred Kings from the Grand Imperial Hall, but he had to help Zhao Feng. If Zhao Feng was about to be killed by Sacred King Feather Spirit and company, he would definitely expose the secret of the fruit to buy time. Sacred King Earth Ghost knew that the issue wasn't actually a huge deal after hearing about it from these Sacred Kings of the Grand Imperial Hall. However, Sacred King Earth Ghost could sense Sacred King Feather Spirit's decisiveness to kill Zhao Feng from his voice. Zhao Feng, hurry up and apologize to them and give them some resources as repayment. Sacred King Earth Ghost messaged Zhao Feng privately. The Sacred Kings from the Grand Imperial Hall just wanted face. As long as Zhao Feng apologized sincerely with Sacred King Earth Ghost backing him up, these Sacred Kings from the Grand Imperial Hall might let go of Zhao Feng. Sacred King Feather Spirit, I already gave you face, but you didn't take it. Zhao Feng's expression paused before he replied. What? Sacred King Earth Ghost almost fell down. Not only did Zhao Feng not follow his advice, he became even cockier instead. At the same time, Sacred King Earth Ghost felt that something was wrong. Logically speaking, placating these guys from the Grand Imperial Hall and obtaining the fruit was the most important task right now, but Zhao Feng didn't seem to want to resolve his feud with them. Sacred King Earth Ghost, it's not a matter of us not giving you face anymore. We will kill this shameless thief. Sacred King Feather Spirit's expression was extremely grim, and the Sacred Kings and Sacred Lords behind him felt humiliated. Let's see how you'll try to escape this time. Sacred King Feather Spirit laughed wickedly, and the other two Sacred Kings immediately stood forward as well. The three Sacred Kings all released the projections of their little worlds and caused space to become chaotic in order to prevent Zhao Feng from using the misty spatial world to escape. Zhao Feng had a slightly impatient expression as he floated in the air, but part of his mind was still focused on the little thieving cat. The little thieving cat had managed to completely dig out the purple and blood-colored crystal. Dark red lines seemed to connect to the bottom of it. The little thieving cat immediately cut the lines off with a short black blade, then swallowed the large purple and blood-colored crystal. Boom. The entire dimension started to shake, and the giant vine started to move. A terrifying intent was released alongside the shaking of the vines. Some experts that were using this intent to cultivate instantly felt their consciousness become blurry and fell asleep. The power of Sacred King Feather Spirit and company was instantly slashed apart as well. What's going on? The two demigods in the air were shocked. The fruit that they were fighting over was created by these vines, and now the vines were moving. Something's wrong. Demigod Withered Breath had a grim expression. Bam! Demigod Withered Breath burned his mystic light sacred power and attacked the tattered crystal with full force. Bam! Crack! The crystal around the red fruit instantly shattered after a few attacks from Demigod Withered Breath. The red fruit released a scorching intent that burned heaven and earth, even the souls of both demigods hurt. How is this possible? Why did it break so easily? Demigod Withered Breath couldn't believe it. He spent a lot of effort at the beginning and couldn't break the crystal at all, but now it easily shattered. However, he didn't have much time to think about it. He immediately took the red fruit. Boom. The vine started to tremble even more the instant the red fruit was picked. Elsewhere, Nan Gongsheng was attacking some crystal as well when he felt like the crystal had become much weaker, and he soon managed to dig out the black fruit from the crystal. At the exact same moment in time, the experts that were searching for treasures were able to destroy the crystal extremely easily and obtain the treasures within. Sacred King Feather Spirit and company were about to attack Zhao Feng, but they started to hesitate because the crystal walls didn't seem to be so tough anymore. It was a lot easier to obtain the treasures hidden within the walls. Quick! The strength of the crystal has decreased dramatically. Attack the fruit on the vines. What's going on? I feel as if the divine power hidden within these crystal walls is slowly fading away. Chaos broke out as all the experts became puzzled. The expressions of the two demigods fighting in the sky shook as they each attacked a layer of crystal over some fruits in front of them. Peng! Boom! Demigod Withered Breath was able to obtain a fruit very quickly. The intent within this fruit is a lot weaker? Demigod Withered Breath was slightly puzzled. On the other side, Demigod Arcane Void also managed to obtain a fruit, but he felt that this fruit was not as good as the red fruit that Demigod Withered Breath obtained earlier. Could it be that the power within the fruits is also disappearing? Demigod Withered Breath said after thinking for a while. The Sacred Lords and Sacred Kings below followed suit and started to attack the fruits on the vines, but the next instant, the crystal around the giant red vine shattered. Wang! The entire dimension trembled as limitless intent surged out from the vines like a beast. It even managed to twist heaven and earth. The souls of many experts that were trying to obtain fruits shattered from this sudden burst of intent. Even the two demigods in the sky quickly retreated and didn't dare to approach the giant vine. Run! This vine has revived. Some of the severely injured Sacred Lords were so scared that they immediately ran away. Whoosh! The giant vine twisted in the air and released a desolate aura as countless vines swept across the dimension. Arg! An early-stage Sacred Lord that was running away was hit by the sweeping vines and immediately killed. Boom! Boom! The crystals at the top started to shatter and fall down. Even the inner region of the crystal rock started to cave in as if it was about to crumble. Run! This vine is too terrifying. Whoosh! Whoosh! All of the experts in the dimension started to retreat. Nan Gongsheng also chose to retreat after obtaining the black fruit. Zhao Feng also exited seclusion and quickly left. Whoosh! Zhao Feng turned into a scarlet bolt of lightning and flew toward the exit. Let's leave this place first. Sacred King Feather Spirit had an ugly expression. They only just arrived, and this place suddenly turned into a forbidden area before they could find any treasures. Don't let that brat get away. Sacred King Greenlight had a deadly expression. My fruit. Sacred King Earth Ghost hesitated, but in the end, he decided to leave. Right now, even demigods were forced to retreat. He was just a measly Sacred King, so how could he dare to go further in? Elsewhere, the little thieving cat, who was still inside the crystal rock, used the short black blade to cut through the soft crystal easily. Whoosh! The little thieving cat turned into a dark silver streak of light and merged into the air. The next instant, a black light flashed next to the fruit that Sacred King Earth Ghost had been attacking and cut off the crystal. The red fruit then disappeared. Boom! 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 All of the experts managed to escape outside, but no one left yet. The divine senses of the two demigods entered the crystal item and started to inspect the situation inside. However, no one saw a silver-gray light pass through the crystal walls and escape. Wang Tilga. A faint layer of gold covered Zhao Feng's left eye as he inspected the situation within. The countless fruits and vines started to twist in the air and slowly become transparent before completely fading away. The divine aura within the walls also started to fade. The power of the weapons and herbs within the crystals was also fading away and dropping in terms of quality.